So I'm doing this episode to fend off the Sunday blues, which I think is that cyclical feeling that you have to go back to something like a job that potentially is embarking from your freedom that you found over the weekend. I think it's a common feeling. You can see it on Sunday nights, such as at department stores or restaurants. They do not have as much traction at that time. A lot of stores are closed on Sunday, probably for the reason of God resting on the seventh day. So a lot of churches feel that out of respect they should close, maybe out of respect to their workers. But the American way is definitely productivity. So it's very interesting to see a time where people may disengage because they're ready to go back to their 9 to 5. Um, and there's a couple things that you could do when it hits you. You can ignore it, but then it'll just probably carry into your week, or you can try to address it head on and do something productive. So I'm going to just list some silly things about, these that we're seeing in common work applications. Um, so one that always gets me is Workday, right? You have people whose whole career is built off of Workday doing job interviews with people before they actually get to a hiring manager, and these people are essentially like gatekeepers to the modern job place. Um, they are making the first impulse decisions on whether someone is um, going to be selected for the next round of a job. Um, the other thing too is going to be the algorithms that play into these job postings on sites. Um, so Workday doesn't get fed directly, I think, yet from LinkedIn and ZipRecruiter, but that's something you'll see in the future. All these players are trying to establish market dominance by not only being the input place for consumers, right, a job applicant, but also the dependency place for users and executives and companies. So these types of things you can think about to really challenge your brain and to think, why is it that this application is so dominant? Think of Microsoft and the dominance they have with Outlook, and how much they control you every single day in the notifications that come up on the screen. When you look down, did I just see that I got a new email? Or am I getting called on Microsoft Teams? Is my light turning yellow? So I have to sit by my desk to make sure that I stay green. Are other people looking at my light to see if I'm green? If I'm yellow, is someone looking at me saying, oh, they're not at their desk, so I feel better right now? It's a big, big fucking mental health game that they study religiously to figure out how can people become more dependent on this, right? They're not looking for a product that people are going to like and interact with. It's what can make people more dependent on this. So the manager likes the tool, right? Because they could potentially monitor their teams, right? Are they at their desk? Are they, do they have an away message up? Do I need to check in with them? And the worker can also utilize it, right? Because they can say, I'm going to make myself most available. I'm going to make sure that I stay green. I want people to see my productivity. Um, but what people don't know is how much behind the scenes these companies are just pulling the strings to control what your output is and how you potentially use these tools. Another big one is that I'm going to take a stab at is Salesforce, right? CRM. That's their stock quote. It's customer, I think, relations manager is the term that they're trying to use there, CRM. And this changed the game for sales. Probably not in the best way either because it's centrally managed, right? Think about the state centrally managing something. Whenever you have something centrally managed, you're going to have a ton of waste and bureaucracy and just ridiculousness and silliness of things that are just justified for the sake of just being justified. I had the CEO at a company I used to work for famously hated centralized power structures because they were separate from the different business units who were actually interacting with the customers and making sales. So when you think about centralized power structures, um, you think about inadequacy, you think about waste, and you think about a lot of red tape. The question, one key question though, is there a necessary evil to that? Are human beings, do they look for centralized power structures to operate? And throughout civilization and human history, it seems like at least mammals and early humans were a lot more tribal and territorial, where they might have been scattered in different packs. Um, but if you were to break down those different packs, there was a centralized governance structure that was probably different depending on different circumstances, but usually had some type of universal norms that governed it. So, another way of saying it, there is a method to this madness that big technology companies use for making their apps very dependent, for increasing the dependency on their apps. And humans do tend to like to go to a centralized structure to be governed. You can break yourself free from that by trying to think, by one, taking the risk of trying to be a little bit independent and breaking off from the power structure. There's a penalty to pay for that, and it's a steep penalty, right? Because you have the fear of being rejected from the tribe, right? And that is probably the same as the fear of being rejected from the tribe. So, other things that may come up too is that you feel ill-equipped or not ready to pursue a break off of the centralized governance structure. But again, once you become used to doing that in a regular, structured way, you start to form your own centralized governance structure, right? The own foundation of your soul and your well-being. And that's what the game is all about, really. That's what the name of game of life is, to try to get to that point where you feel like you're centrally stable, where you feel like centrally you're governed and centrally have control over the situations that come to you. So, to bring it back though to the Sunday blues, right? Another big thing that plays into it is sports games, especially football that is played predominantly on Sunday. They have extended it into late Sunday night games over the last 15 years, maybe even 20 years. And famously, they have Monday night football as well, right? Some little deviations from the norm there so that you won't completely tune out. But what happens during these games a lot of times can drive you into the night of Sunday and have a mindset on for you going into the next day. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. There's much worse things that you could have, right? You could have nothing on your Sunday and just be lying around wasting away. You also could be, it could be a day where it's of more hardship, right? Where you have to transition, potentially caregiver support with kids and other stuff. So it's always good to think that it could be it could be much worse. But what I try to do when confronted with that situation of being brought down, again, is to address it head on. Try to distract yourself with something that could grab your attention, and then try to execute on that. Right. So find a distraction that you can invest time and try to execute on that, and that might bring you to a new place where you actually start looking forward to activities that you do at that time, and then that feeling starts to dissipate, right? And it just becomes another type of your day. And most people probably have patterns around this already, right? Where maybe on Sunday night they have dinner with their families, or do something with the church, or maybe even prepare for their work week, right? Where it's like, it's 7 o'clock, I'm going to go do 1 hour of email checking to get ready. Just saying that out loud makes me just really depressed and just like, oh, I could never do that. But if I had to go do it, to check email to prepare, you'd actually be in a better place because you would be probably a leg up on a lot of other people that are going to just be going fresh into their Monday, where they have to take that first hour to really let the caffeine sink in, goof around on social media, and read some wacky news stories, try to catch up. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to beat everybody, you might see that there's an advantage, right, of going on the night before and checking your emails and getting prepared. But that's the weird thing about jobs nowadays, right? Where it's like, why would I invest that time to do that? What's the payoff going to be, right? And that's a great internal question to ask. Is my payoff here so that I am more prepared for my work week? Well, if you want to be more prepared for your work week, ask why. Why do I need right now to be more prepared for my work week? Do I have an important meeting that's coming up on Monday? Am I meeting with a potential new client on Monday? Am I meeting with my boss on Monday? And if you can answer yes to the why, then maybe it's valuable to do it. If you don't really have a good reason other than the impulse, I got to check my email, you might just get drugged down into even like the Sunday night hell where you're just starting to project your fears of your work week based on, those psychopaths that are responding to emails over the weekend. And I've been one of them a lot of times too, but the crazy people that work around the clock and can never seem to quit. And I think we're going to see that. Well, I think we're going to see a large percentage of the population become more hooked on overworking, right? Where they think they're being more productive, or maybe their boss puts more pressure on them to show initiative. But what I hope to see is more people develop other activities, right? Or other types of inspirations that they could pursue, so that they're not completely bogged down by dependency of dopamine hits from their 9 to 5 job. So, um, yeah, so those are my thoughts on what causes the Sunday blues, why it happens, and things and ways to get around it, and some thinking puzzles to potentially um, challenge yourself to understand what is going on.